Serving Dixon County.
Turn it up.
Streaming online at WDKN.com.
I love listening to it over and over. I love it.
This is 101.5 The One at WDKN, Dixon's country music home.
You're listening to The Old Timer Show, presented by RFC Broadband on Dixon's only live and local station, 101.5 The One and WDKN. Now, here's your host.
Good morning, Dixon County. It is Saturday morning, February the 5th, 2022, and we are live here in the studio of the Old Timer Show. And I got a great guest here with you to share some stories with you this morning. I've got Mr. Tony Epps England in the studio with us, and I'm really excited about the show. One of the things that I wanted to do with hosting the Old Timer Show was to get some really interesting guests who knew a lot about the history of Dixon County and get them in here to the studio so we could talk to the people. And I think we've done that this morning. We've got one of the experts of Dixon County history to come share some stuff with us. Tony, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine, sir. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's good to have you in the studio here this morning. So we're on the Old Timer Show, and usually kind of how we do this is we start off by talking a little bit about you. You're the guest, so it's all about you this morning. We want to know a little bit about you, and we talked a little bit before the show started here, and you've kind of been all over Dixon. And
Yes,
why don't
sir.
you give us a little background information on where you are from, and then just start with your early part of your life, and we'll go from there.
All right. I was born in Pomona, the old White House next to the old Church of Christ, and it's gone now. They got the Williams truck line, big old brick house there. And I went to Burns Elementary 5 out of 6 years. Then I went to Oakmont 1 year, then Dixon Elementary my 7th and 8th grade. And after that, Daddy got transferred on the railroad, so I went to McEwen my high school years. Went in Germany, Vietnam, loved traveling, then got out in '78. Came back home, and that's how I started my history. My mama.
Your mama.
She woke me up on a Saturday morning at 6 o'clock and said, "Son, let's go." I said, "What are we doing, Mama?" She said, "I got a graveyard I found, and I want to go to it now."
Really?
And so we went, and that started me.
And you went with your mama
Yes, I
if your
did.
mama says let's go, that's what you do.
That's what you do.
Right. So that's how you got started.
Yes, sir.
Because that's what I was wondering. Because you, the way that we sort of met was through Facebook.
Yes, sir.
Which can be a bad thing sometimes, but it can also be a good thing, and it can connect people. And in our case, it's been a way for me to connect with you.
Yeah.
And you seem to have an extensive collection of things. Did that also start with your mom collecting artifacts and
yes.
stuff like that?
She loved going to yard sales, estate sales, and I've been very fortunate to find a lot of stuff. I told you I bought Colonel James's trunk.
Mm-hmm.
I still got everything in it. I've bought several estate stuff. The old ledger book from the Charlotte courthouse, excuse me, post office and store.
Yeah.
1850.
Wow.
So it's just very. I got a lot of old ledgers. Derek Webster, who did that Discovering Dixon County,
Yes.
is one of the better ones too. He knows a lot about this county.
Well, and Derek, we're going to definitely have him on the show. He was actually, and he's probably listening right now. He's a good buddy of ours. He's the one who started that Facebook group,
Yes,
Discovering Dixon County, and we were going to have him on the show. He was a little bit under the weather. We'll have him on soon. I would like to talk to him a little bit about why he started it, because that's the Facebook group where our history is sort of being preserved, and I know you're doing a lot of contributing to that.
Yes, sir, you're right. It is a great site. It really is. Rick Hollis, Rick Robinette, several. Martha Goodman, all them all contribute to that site, and the pictures are awesome. I have tons of pictures.
You have a lot.
But Martha Goodman has a lot. Derek himself, and then other people contribute from Sylvia and Staten and all them places. A lot of history in Dixon County. A lot of history people.
Yes, and I think one cool thing about the internet has been able to kind of bring us all together,
I
and that's
agree.
how I've been able to meet you and some of these other, really good historians who are sharing the history of the county, and in a lot of ways it's preserving it because we've got these things in the drawers at home and in the closets, and it's a way for us to bring those out We can use our phones to take a picture, and then one thing I really love about it is I'll post something, because I'm still a pretty young guy, and I know some history, but I don't know everything, and you guys kind of fill in the blanks for me when I have a lot of questions. And one thing I love about the Facebook site and being able to share that information, I'll put a picture on or any kind of something, story, and then I'll get feedback from everybody who kind of, fills in the blanks. And one of my favorite things that you post are all these different pictures. Where did you get all these pictures?
Miss Jenny Wordworth, lady came down here from Minnesota. She helped incorporate White Bluff. She was a photographer. So she took pictures galore from 1890 to 1910. Her granddaughter married, but they never had any children. He called the county city hall in White Bluff, and Dixie Kerr said, you need to get hold of Tony England. And so he called me. And he said, I got these pictures and documents. Do you want them? And I said, sir, I'll be down there tomorrow. He said, no, don't drive. I'll mail them to you. So I said, so I gave my address, and within a week, oh, golly. Man, Justin, I was like a 10-year-old kid on Christmas morning.
I know that feeling.
Oh. So, it was just, and I still got them, of course, at the house, gobs of pictures, old documents. And it had to do with Van Leer's, Cumberland Furnace, all that stuff. That's where she got married at, was in Cumberland Furnace.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the black families down there all loved him because her daddy was a preacher. Mm-hmm. And the Episcopal church down there is what he did.
Wow.
He helped build that church. And his picture's in there.
So do you remember talking about your mom and talking about, going around to different yard sales and learning different history with her? Do you remember the first really cool local artifact that you found that kind of inspired you? Because I can remember mine. I actually went to a yard sale one day and found an old Coca-Cola bottle, and on the bottom it had Dixon on it. And it had been from the local Coca-Cola, plant here, and then I got to learning more about that. Do you remember the first thing, like artifact that you found that got you into the local history, made you want to find more?
Well, as far as maybe that, metal detecting, I found some stuff. Now, I do have the original city limit cast iron signs that was on the railroad.
Wow.
My granddaddy took them off the tracks, because they didn't want them no more. Gave them to my daddy, then I inherited them. And that's what really got me. You're talking 1970s, I love them. And I was going to stick them up at my house, but too many people said, no, they get stolen.
Yeah.
So they're in my garage, but I still have them.
And sometimes it's good to share them, and then sometimes it's good to kind of keep things put away to make sure that we have them for years to come. We're here this morning on WDKN. We've got Mr. Tony Epps England in here with us this morning. We will take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk some more history here on the Old Timers program.
Let's talk about your internet options in this area. Cable internet, cell phone internet, and the phone company. Does that cover it? And not everybody has all three options. So if you're looking to make a change, try RFC Broadband, a local business right here in Dixon, offering the speeds you need at prices you can afford with no data caps. 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com.
In times of joy, in moments of grief, broadcasters come through, even when all else fails. Today, with more ways than ever to experience the moments that transform our lives, Americans still choose broadcast radio and television more than all other media combined. We are the local broadcasters of radio and television, reaching more people, touching more lives. Brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
And we're back here on the Old Timers program, here on Saturday morning. I've got Mr. Tony Epps England here live with me on WDKN, AM 1260 and FM 101.5. We're also streaming on WDKN.com, and we've been talking about all kinds of local history this morning, and really we've been talking about how you got into history, which was your mom.
My mama.
She got you going, and tell me just a little bit more about your family before we go any further.
Daddy was a railroad man all of his life. Mama they owned the arcade grill out over here, down where Reagan's is now, and they owned that for about 7 or 8 years back in the '60s. And I met a lot of people by that time, and I was still young.
Was that a restaurant?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And a lot of old timers coming there and eat, of course. And so I was maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and I get to meet these old timers coming there, the bishops and all of them, and talk to them. So my mama, her name was Frances Tucker England. She loved history. She loved genealogy. She loved family. Her and Daddy had 10 kids. I'm the 7th.
Wow.
And we've lost 2, but we still got 7 here, so wait. And my mama, she's the backbone of my family's history. Now, my sister, older sister, she's gone, but she was involved in just as much as I was because of Mama. There wasn't a day gone by she'd want to talk about the family. And killing hogs back in November, and just having food on the table, and Mama put a sheet across it, and somebody come in, she'd eat. And you better eat, you know. But it was just good old Southern home hospitality. Dixon County was famous for it. I mean, you know, any house had food ready for you when you went over there. Everybody talked to you. There wasn't nobody stuck up. And I really love it here.
And talking about the good old days of Dixon County, what you know? So you teach a lot of history and a lot. I'm a teacher over at the Dixon County High School, and I enjoy what I do. I teach to, you know, the youth, and I teach them about different things in history, and I try to throw some local stuff in with the Tennessee history and the American history, and I enjoy that. But you teach me and you teach other people a lot about our local history. What is your favorite story or your favorite thing to tell or to talk about when somebody gets you going on local history?
Oh, God. I'll be honest with you, all of it. I mean, Dixon County's old, of course, 1803. Then you got Cumberland Furnace, in my opinion, second, White Bluff's third. There's history all in Dixon County, and there's somebody to represent that little town community in Dixon County. Sheila Dannemeyer up there, and Cumberland Furnace. I mean, everybody, even Derek Webster, he gives it out on Pond. So, I mean, you know, I talk to all them talk to me, or I look up old papers, you know, like y'all do, and find some research in there about the railroad tracks. And then I tell you what got to me. 6 months ago, a black lady from North came down here, was trying to find something out about her granddaddy that got killed during the Civil War on the railroad tracks, right down here below Pond. Come to find out, my great-granddaddy was with McNary's Raiders that came in there and did that. And I honestly told her, I said, ma'am, my great-granddaddy was with McNary when they came in there, and your great-granddaddy and his friend was killed on picket duty. You know, she cried, she said, but I'm so honored to meet you. I said, no, ma'am, it's my honor. I just love history, and to know that happened, and she sent me all the information about it. So
that's an interesting connection there.
Oh, God, it is. So, you know, you just kind of get goosebumps.
And you never know when you're doing research like that. I know from when I do, you know, research for the articles that I write and the different things that I do, it's really interesting what you find out. I mean, that you didn't know when you started, and you weren't even looking for, and then you'll stumble upon something, and then you'll find a whole new set of information, that whole new story.
This gentleman's name was Oscar Banks, that my great-granddaddy was involved with. And I just, you know, she said, do you know where he's buried at? And I said, I can tell you this. They put him on a train and shipped him home. That's all I can tell you. That's all I can find out. She said, well, good, because we know then he's at the family cemetery. So I just love history. My great-granddaddy was a first lieutenant with Alexander Duval McNary, the famous guerrilla. And he was wounded on a raid in White Bluff. Was shot in the hip, never went nowhere, and he died with a bullet still in him. So he died 3 days before he got his pension. So, I mean, just awesome stuff, you know.
I love the Civil War history of the county, and, you know, a lot of people will say, well, there's not a whole lot that happened in Dickson County. No major battles, not like Franklin or Nashville or some of these other places, Murfreesboro, Chattanooga, that had major action.
Right.
But there are some interesting stories when it comes to the Civil War in Dickson.
I got a 5-page letter that a lady named Mary Stewart wrote about a skirmish in White Bluff. And she told exactly where it's at. Excuse me. And it was on the land that Charles Wood did own. And now a Mr. Canada owns it. But the 5th Iowa Cavalry came in there. McNary's Raiders came in there. And there was 2 or 3 skirmishes. There were several killed on both sides. And she put on there, the worst thing about it all was they took the Union soldiers home and they left the Confederates on the ground. And they found bones, But it was wrote in 1904. Wow. So it's awesome stuff. Mm-hmm. And I got the original that she wrote. And to know that I'm holding something in my hands that this lady was alive during that time. Jared Howell was the man that took him up there. He was alive. And it's just awesome. It really is.
So you mentioned earlier the metal detecting.
Yes.
And I've always been kind of fascinated by that. We can't really do that a whole lot anymore.
Right.
Seems like all the land, it has been bought up or turned into this, turned into that. But I know in the early days, from what I've heard, you guys could kind of mess around with that a little bit and see what you could find. What's some of the stuff that you discovered in the soil here?
I have found some really good stuff. I have found personal items like a wedding band, or a ring that has a heart, a cross, and an anchor on it. I have watches. I found a little bitty kid's toy. I'm not talking about a little bitty made out of lead where the soldier whittled it. And it's just old coins, of course. But bullets. I found Colonel James's belt buckle at his house when we metal detected it. It's all history. Derek Webster has found some great stuff, too. He's found a little bit better than I have. I mean, I got a lot of stuff. Mine's bullets, bayonets, scabbards, stuff like that.
Edward, who is probably listening to us this morning, I know he said he was going to be listening, and we'll try to get him a replay in case he overslept this morning. But Edward England Jr., of course, is who I'm talking about, and he's been real good to me as far as sharing certain things with me that I can share with my students. And I was lucky enough, last year I was teaching over at the Dickson Middle School, and in 8th grade we teach the Civil War. And it's important to get some good stories told to the students, but it's also good to show them some things. And he was kind enough to lend me a case that had tons of different artifacts in it related to the Civil War, some bullets and some different things like that. But there were also some arrowheads and some other things that go maybe even further back, and I was fascinated by that stuff too.
Yes. Now, my daughter, and I'm going to go and give it Marissa Dorr, is the 8th grade history teacher at Charlotte Middle.
And a really good one, by the way, award-winning teacher.
Thank you. And
yes.
I have given her stuff to take to school, and she said all day them kids are just all looking at that stuff, arrowheads included. Yeah. And they'd go, are those Cherokees or Apaches? And the truth is, we don't know because they didn't. This is flint. So you're talking 2,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Wow.
So, but the Civil War stuff, to have artifacts knowing that soldier whittled that bullet out and made a chest piece and then dropped it. Or I found a token, a Union token. And I thought it was a penny, but it's a Union token. And knowing that soldier had that in his pocket and that he lost it. And here I come 100 years later.
Wow. That kind of stuff is fun.
It is.
And it's very interesting. We're here on the Old Timers program this morning. We've got Mr. Tony Epps England. He's here with us sharing some different stories about all kinds of different things this morning. So kind of going back, because, the show goes quick. We're a little over halfway through here. I want to talk to you a little bit about that case that you got regarding Mr. William James. And for those people who are listening who may not know who he is, can we give just a little background on who William James is and then talk about those artifacts? And then maybe people will understand why, they're so important and interesting to us.
Colonel William James was born in Charlotte. His daddy and mama owned the house right there across from the county court, It's been there since 1802, 1803. They owned the first post office, store. There was lawyers and magistrates. Now I'm going to make this pretty. He was he was brought up fine. He went to Tracy Academy. He went to West Point because of his granddaddy.
Mm-hmm.
When he got out of service in 1903, he came home to White Bluff, and he actually told everybody, he says, I have been so prim and proper all my life. Now I'm myself, and I ain't going to do nothing I don't want to do.
What an attitude to have.
Well, it is. But the artifacts he had, he was like my mama. He saved everything.
Really?
He saved every piece of paper. And when you come one day, and I'm talking about documents to do from here in Dixon, from this store or that store, you know, and he had tokens because he had his own little store. And when his employers got paid, he would give them a little bit of cash, but then he'd give them tokens to make sure they spent it back in his store.
Smart, huh?
Yeah,
Smart businessman, wasn't he?
He really was.
He was.
And then he adopted Miss Ann. She was beating his second cousin. He adopted her because he didn't want to leave his inheritance to anybody else.
So he didn't have any children?
No.
That's right.
No. He did have 3 nieces and 1 nephew by a previous brother. But he said that he gave them so much growing up that they didn't need or deserve anything else. So he adopted Miss Ann in Texas and in Nashville to make it legally. And so they even took her to court, and it lasted maybe, from what I can understand, a day, and the judge just threw it out because he adopted her.
So William James, he was in the service. If I remember correct, Spanish-American Wars.
Yes, sir.
Had a little time spent there, and then he comes back to Dixon County, and he had grown up in Charlotte, but he became synonymous with White Bluff.
Definitely.
And he actually became a very rich man, from what I understand. He was a very smart businessman, and he was able to acquire a lot of land. And some of that land, I think, is still kind of not really been passed down from him.
Right. It's like 1,025 acres, and I have the paperwork. The man's name was Tyree Rhodes from West Point, Tennessee, and he bought it for 44 cents an acre.
Wow.
And it's all that land now from White Bluff to the Harpeth River.
Wow.
But he was very smart. I mean, he was very money-wise, never married, like you said, adopted Miss Ann. When he died, I don't know, Miss Ann, the funeral itself, I think, cost $20,000.
Wow.
Now, that's for the casket. You see the big headstones inside the school now.
Yeah, that's another thing, too, because we're about to have to go to break. But before we go, let's tell the people a little. So there's a school in White Bluff called
Named after his daddy.
William James.
Yes, named after his daddy.
Named after his dad.
And when they was redoing the school, they moved his body. I was honored to get to go to Tommy Marvin and look inside it.
So he was actually buried in the school.
Yes, sir. Now he is.
And then, not that long ago.
No, sir.
And how long ago was this where this happened with Tommy Marvin?
Oh, I'm going to say maybe 10, 15 years ago.
So about 10 or 15 years ago, they had to move the body,
Right.
and you were involved in that.
Yes, sir. And he was buried with the glass-covered coffin, and it looked just like they buried him that day.
Wow.
It was embalmed so well. His mustache, had his sword on him, the white gloves. I mean, just like. Then he started, not him, but the velvet inside the casket started deteriorating a little bit. So they sealed it real good and put it up.
So where is he now?
He's inside the inside the lobby of William James School.
He's still there. Okay. Well, that's interesting, and that's what I was going to ask you, because I know the kids always ask me whenever they go over there, is he really there,
He's there.
Coach Spurlock? And I say, yes, he's there.
Tommy Marvin put a piece of paper in there just in case they had to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right, well, we're getting all the information here this morning on the Old Timers program. We've got Mr. Tony Epps England with us here. We're going to take our last break. We'll come back to wrap up the show here on the Old Timers program.
Let's talk about your internet options in this area: cable internet, cell phone internet, and the phone company. Does that cover it? And not everybody has all three options. So if you're looking to make a change, try RFC Broadband, a local business right here in Dixon, offering the speeds you need at prices you can afford with no data caps. 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com.
In times of joy, in moments of grief, broadcasters come through, even when all else fails. Today, with more ways than ever to experience the moments that transform our lives, Americans still choose broadcast radio and television more than all other media combined. We are the local broadcasters of radio and television, reaching more people, touching more lives. Brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
We're back here on the Old Timers program, and I'm your host, Justin Spurlock, and I'm lucky this morning that I've got a true historian here, a true local historian. Mr. Tony Epps England is in the studio with us, and we've been talking about a range of different topics, all kinds of things. We talked about metal detecting, talked about how your mom got you into history, and we kind of got off talking a little bit about William James, but I'm pretty fascinated by him. He's an interesting guy, and when we left off, you were telling us about how he's still buried in the middle school there, and I was talking about how the kids will ask me that, and I thought he was, but I just wanted to confirm because I knew you would know. But he's still over there, and he's still part of White Bluff and part of the school there.
Yes, sir. Still buried right there in the lobby, and it has the big marker that was over his grave on top of it. So, Tommy Marvin put a paper inside that because he said with the school, you never know, he'll probably be moved again. So that paper in there's going to be telling about all this that happened so many years ago. Now, his family was very prominent. His mama, Miss Elizabeth, they built the Elizabeth House in White Bluff and named it after her. He gave the land. And the first Christmas they had there as a town was 1914. And they brought in a Christmas tree. And, of course, all the decorations on it was homemade. They had gifts. And I need to put it on there so you can see it. They had soap that smelled so good, and they would give it out as presents.
Really?
And this one little girl told Miss Woodward, says, "You know that soap you gave me for Christmas?" She says, "Yes, I still got it because it smelled so good."
She didn't even want to use it. She liked it so much. Well, that's interesting, and that's the kind of stories that I really enjoyed reading on the site there. So if people don't know about it, you can get on Facebook and you can search for Discovering Dixon County. That's the name of the group Mr. Derek Webster started, and that we all contribute to. And it takes a lot of work to keep that site,
It does. Chad Bradford, who's also administrator on it, he's a very good historian also.
Hopefully we can get him on the show, and Derek and Mr. Rick Hollis, Rick Robinette, all these guys on the show eventually, because I think getting on the radio and talking about history is sometimes even more fun than writing about it. It can be anyways.
I agree. And maybe we need to do like we did that one time. Have Derek and Mr. Hollis and Mr. Robinette, you, me,
have
all
a nice
right
little
round table.
Round table. Well, we've got 4 microphones here, so we got some room for 2 more guys if we need to do it. And I know I talked to Edward. Mr. Edward England Jr. We're hoping to maybe get him on the show next week, so that'll be interesting. Is there anything else you want to tell the people before we get out of here? We've got a couple more minutes.
I've enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed it. It's an honor to be here and talk about this great county and the people in it.
And it's fun to talk about, but maybe as we're heading out here, tell people, why you love the county history so much. What are your final thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, my mama.
Yeah.
Because when she started this, I was 25 years old. At that time, women, girls, football, basketball was my main. But when my mama really got me involved in this, and I started talking to the old timers that was in the 90s and stuff, I realized they had more history in their mind than I'll ever have.
Right.
Because you're talking Civil War, you're talking Depression area, World War I, World War II. It's just, and just to listen to them talk, the White Screamer, the Werewolf.
Werewolf Spring.
Yes, sir.
Those
to listen to them talk about that, Randy Tidwell was awesome about the Werewolf Springs.
Oh, I need to get him on here to talk about it then.
Yes, sir. They had a little show about it one time, put it on our channel that we had, and It was at Montgomery Bell when they camped out. It's a good one.
It's a good one, huh? Yeah, I'll have to get him in here. Well, thank you for coming in.
No problem. I'm honored.
I want you to promise you'll come back again sometime whenever you're available, and we'll talk about some more local history here because it's been a lot of fun to me. And so, and like I said before, Discovering Dickson County is a group on Facebook. So search that out, and you can join. And you might have to answer a couple of questions and get by Mr. Edward and Chad. They're the administrators who kind of screen those things, but answer the questions correctly and just show them that you're a real person, and you can join the group. And when you do, you can search, and there's all kinds of guys who contribute. Mr. Chuck Poole is also a good one.
Poole.
He does a lot of good research with getting those clips on different newspaper articles, and we've got a lot of other guys and a lot of people who just maybe find something and they put it on there, and we can start a big conversation.
And that is true.
And it's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It sure is.
We have a good time with it, and it's been a lot of fun to connect with different people on there. And so hopefully we can get Derek on here soon, because I really want to ask Derek, what inspired him to start that site. Because in a lot of ways, things like that and the Historic Society and different groups have kept the history alive. And I just kind of always wonder, what inspired you to do that, because they inspire me, and then hopefully I can inspire the next generation, and we can keep these things going, because like you said, whenever we lose somebody, we lose a lot of history.
We do.
So if we get the opportunity to maybe get somebody on the radio and record it or write down, the information in an article, it's another way to keep the history alive. Well, thank you again, Mr. Tony Epps England, for coming on the show today, and we'll get you back on soon to talk about some more history. Thanks to everybody for listening. Mr. Dale Reagan is in the studio. I can see him out there. He's getting ready to come in and do his show, and I'll be back on the air with you at 8 o'clock for Know Your County. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week here on the Old Timers program.